move into gambling, and then and go forward from there. I do want to thank all of you for being a part of this class and participating. I want to thank you for paying tuition. That is a blessing to me and to Clarion, and it's a blessing to this church too, and to this community, because you're going to have a lot of powerfully equipped people. If perhaps I slipped and didn't, I think I covered everybody good on your applications. But if you're here and you have a bachelor's degree and you want to be working on your master's instead of a bachelor's, you're qualified to do that. In some cases, some of you had enough credits with life experience and ministry experience and things, and some other education and stuff that you were also qualified to work on your master's. And if you think you might be in that category and I didn't let you know that, come to me and ask me about it, because I don't want to rob you of the blessing of getting a more advanced degree or something. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out. I think I pretty well checked that out with everybody. But just in case, if you're curious and you think that you might fit in that category. I don't think there was anybody right today that qualified to be on the doctorate level. But if you think you do, come to me and we'll look at it. And we do foresee and hope that we'll be able to continue again next year for any of you that want to go on to the next level, degree-wise, and also for new people coming in, new students. But we'll see how that goes when that time comes. Just maybe not, maybe so, maybe not. I did put in those handouts, I ask you to, if you would, start using that texasseminary@gmail.com. I don't know if you noticed that. Correspond with me as often as you want about anything. There's no stupid question, no too small question. But use that email. The reason I chose to make a new email was because I'm having a school in Tennessee now, and then hopefully one in Ennis, Texas, and hopefully one at Christ for the Nations. The Ennis, Texas and Christ for the Nations are not finalized yet, but we're in the negotiations right now. And so if those work out, even with the Tennessee, that's finalized. I'm gonna have so many students that I needed to have a separate email that just deals with you guys, besides all my other business. You know what I mean? So if you would use that way I won't get confused and I'll be able to keep you straight. Okay? Another announcement, another thing I needed to say. If you, for whatever reason, miss a class or miss the whole weekend or something, I'm going to leave it up to you to send me an email and request the courses. Okay? Like, let's just say that you missed 2 classes this weekend, or you missed the whole weekend. It really is irrelevant. That you'll send me an email to texasseminary@gmail.com and say, Lee, I missed these 2 classes, and go ahead and put the month, the date, okay? Or at least put the school. In fact, I missed the 2 February classes. Tell me which classes, or I missed them all, whichever it is. I'm at the Antler School, and I need these 2 classes, okay? Because if you just tell me, it's very likely I'm going to forget. And if I write it down, I probably will get home with it and I'll probably take care of it. But the more people I have to keep track of, the more difficult that's going to be for me. And I don't want to let you down, okay? So if you would just email me, give me your name. Of course, you'll have your email, because you're going to email me. And give me what classes you need. Then I'll take care of you, okay? Okay? If you ever have a problem, if you don't ever get a test, like, I'm going to send you the test next week. If you don't ever get the test in a reasonable amount of time, you need to email me and say, I didn't get the test. Okay? That means I messed up somehow. You know what I mean? But don't wait so late that it puts you in a bind. I don't want to put you in a bind. It's okay. If I can send it twice, it's not a problem. I'm here to serve you. So, y'all understand what I'm saying? If you have any questions, any issues, if I send you courses through email and they don't work, don't just assume there's something wrong on your end. Email me back and say, hey, you sent me these courses and they ain't working. Okay? Let me help you. Let me send you another link. Let me work on it. I'll send you CDs. You know what I'm saying? In other words, I'm going to fix your problem. But I can't fix it if I don't know. And besides that, you giving me feedback on any issue or problem helps me fix it for everybody. Y'all understand? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to perfect this whole thing so it makes it better for everybody. All right? Now, I'm getting a new website built, and it's going to be awesome. But it's going to be probably April before it gets done. And when it gets built, I'll have all 150-something courses on there. And every time we do a course, it'll be added. And when that time comes, it'll be easy for you. All you'll have to do is just go to the website, bang, it'll be right there. And we won't have to do, email courses or send CDs and things. But that's not here yet. So that's coming. Let's see, is there anything else I needed to tell you? You got the new schedule. And it's my intention to abide by that schedule through the rest of the year. I think I'm going to do the grading of the test the way that we did it this time. That just, when I got down to trying to scan them and send them to everybody, I was having all kinds of problems. By the time I scanned it and got ready to attach it to the email, you couldn't see it, So I was like, well, so I just sent you the score. So I'm just going to do that, and I'll just send you your score so you'll know what you made, and then I'll bring your test the next time, okay? You all did good scanning yours. If you don't have a scanner or the ability to get it to me, it's not a problem. Just bring it to the next class. And by the time I grade everybody else's, I pretty well know the answers to everything on there. And if I don't, I'll bring the key. And either way, we'll grade your test, and we'll be good, okay? We'll get you graded and get you taken care of. Any questions? Yes? Taking a picture? Oh, yeah. As long as I can just see it, that's all that matters. I just need to be able to look at it so I can grade it and then make a copy to put in the original file. Because at the end of the year, I have to send your files to the office in Blackwell, because the original file goes to him, to the president. And which, by the way, if you have, there's another announcement I need to make. Who reminded me? If you haven't given me any type of supporting document that needs to go in your file, you have until about November to do that. But you need to keep that in the back of your mind, okay? Like if you need to get some transcripts from your previous schools, or you need anything like that. You don't all have that to do, but some of you do. And many of you have already done that. You just need to either bring them to me in class sometime between now and November, or you need to mail them to me at my home or something. Okay, so just so that I can say, now I told you this, okay? Because I can't send for your degree in November when we come and do our last class so that we can have our graduation, because he won't give it to you if he don't have a complete file. Y'all understand? Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's where we're at. Okay, y'all ready to start? All right. I enjoy being with y'all. Y'all are awesome. So let's talk about barbiturates on page 28. Barbiturates are central nervous system depressants. They act in a similar manner to alcohol by slowing down many areas of the brain. Drugs of this class are known as sedative hypnotics, in that they can be used as sedatives to calm people, and also at higher doses as hypnotics to assist in sleeping. The medicinal uses: through the early 1900s, barbiturates were prescribed widely for anxiety and insomnia, and were also used in conjunction with amphetamines to treat depression. Prescription of barbiturates increased markedly in the late 1950s and 60s, when up to 500,000 people in the UK were estimated to be taking them, with nearly 1/4 of these patients dependent upon them. Their widespread availability resulted in many deaths through accidental overdose, and they were a common agent for suicide. Concern about addiction potential for barbiturates and the ever-increasing numbers of fatalities associated with them led to development of alternative medications. With the discovery of a safer alternative, which were the benzodiazepines, or tranquilizers, the medicinal use of these barbiturates for treating anxiety and insomnia has been greatly reduced since the 70s. Nevertheless, phenobarbital is still widely used as an anticonvulsant to control epilepsy, and other barbiturates are occasionally used to treat depression. The abuse of many other drugs of abuse, unlike other drugs of abuse, barbiturates are rarely produced in clandestine laboratories. Generally, legitimate pharmaceutical products are diverted to the illicit market through forged prescriptions, although many barbiturates are also illegally imported from foreign manufacturers. Barbiturates are generally nicknamed barbs and downers by drug abusers. These are called names and often they're called other names, and often based on the color of the capsule as reds or yellows. Barbiturates that need to be used commonly, barbiturates that are used to be used commonly, abused include amobarbital, or that's the amytal, phenobarbital, and secobarbital, or seconal, as they are not prescribed much these days. These drugs have only a limited presence in the illicit drug market, where they may be available in capsules and tablets, sometimes in liquid form. This was another drug that was real popular back in the 70s, 60s. And it was real common to hear about downers, you know. You could usually tell when somebody was, you know, it was speed or it was downers. And you could usually tell which one the guy was on, you know. And descriptive of its name, pretty well, that's the way he acted. You know, if it was a downer, he was like this. People would say, "You on downers, man?" And he'd be like, "Yeah." You know, you could pretty well tell what was going on. And if he was on speed, you know, he was like he was pumped up, you know. You don't seem to see the very obvious symptoms of drug abuse as much now as you did during that period of time. And I think it was because the older drugs back then, which are not as common on the market or available now, have been replaced by better drugs, or what people are taking now. But back then they were just so obvious. But anyway. Barbiturate sleeping pills are most often abused for their intoxicating effect. Abusers usually swallow the drug, often with alcohol, to increase its intoxicating effect. And this is where a lot of the overdoses and things of that nature would come into play and happen a lot of times. Barbiturates work by enhancing the action of brain neurotransmitters that is in charge of inhibiting parts of the brain sometimes. For example, when you go to sleep, some areas of the brain are inhibited as they are not needed. As barbiturates facilitate the activity of one of the main inhibiting neurotransmitters, they have an impact on many aspects of the body, including mood, locomotion, coordination, and even breathing. It's almost funny when I'm remembering things that I haven't thought of in years and years and years and years, but when I was a teenager, of people on drugs and stuff and how they would act. But it was kind of humorous to see people on drugs, because you'd see people sometimes on downers, and they'd almost move slow, you know, like this. I'm not talking about everybody, you know, the whole town wasn't going around like that. But when you'd see somebody, and usually back then it was just kind of a hippie-looking character. You know, because there was the drug culture back then, and they'd be on some drug, and you could pretty well tell what they were taking. I mean, and of course, you refer to it by its slang term, which, you know, downers or uppers or speed or quaaludes or LSD or whatever, you know. Anyway. Small amounts produce calmness and relaxed muscles. The combination of sedation and relaxed anxiety are features which made this type of a drug popular as drugs of abuse. Moderate doses will cause drowsiness, confusion, inability to concentrate, and loss of coordination, tremors, and slurred speech. These effects make it dangerous to drive a car or operate machinery, as these doses judgment is very seriously impaired. Large doses of barbiturates produce depressed pulse rate, dilated pupils, and shallow breathing. Vital life processes such as the heart and breathing rates may be inhibited, and such doses may easily cause unconsciousness and sometimes death. The consequences of barbiturate abuse: the use of barbiturates with other drugs that slow down the body, such as alcohol, manipulates the effects and greatly increases the risk of death. Overdose deaths can occur when barbiturates and alcohol are used together, either deliberately or accidentally. Depending on the dose, frequency and duration of use, tolerance and or physical and psychological dependence on barbiturates can develop quickly. A user becomes tolerant to barbiturates. The margin of safety between an effective dose and the lethal dose becomes very narrow. So to obtain the same level of intoxication, a drug abuser who is intolerant to barbiturates may raise his or her dose to a level that can produce coma and death. In other words, that gap begins to narrow. They need so much to get the desired effect, but it's like the point of no return doesn't increase, but the need to meet their desired effect presses closer to that point, and it becomes critical. Dependence or addiction to barbiturates can occur within a very short time, and long-term barbiturate users require hospitalization in order to safely undergo withdrawal effects from these drugs. Barbiturate overdose is a factor in nearly 1/3 of all reported drug-related deaths. These include suicide and accidental drug poisonings. Accidental deaths sometimes occur when a user takes one dose, becomes confused, and unintentionally takes additional or larger doses. With barbiturates, there is less difference between the amount that produces sleep and the amount that kills. Well, I do that with aspirin. Y'all didn't think that was funny, huh? Don't you ever get confused? Did I take that painkiller? That's what I do when I have a headache. Oh, well. Okay, we're going to stop right there and move back now to page 81. 81. So what we're doing, as I told you earlier, we're skipping over all the individual descriptions of drugs, because you guys can take that and read that. And actually, I've already started working on the test, and I'm not going to test you over any of that, because I'm not going over it in the class, and it's in the manual. You can go over it. Cannabis. You know what cannabis is, and if you don't, read it. It's in there, okay? 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 Any of these, they're here. LSD, specifically described. If you want to know, read it, okay? Methadone. Magic mushrooms. Some of you really want to know about that, okay? In other words, tranquilizers. That information's in there, but I didn't see it beneficial to us, and I didn't see it in our time schedule for me to go through all of that and cover all of that. So you can look at that yourself. We're going to go to gambling, which is another addiction type. It'll be short. Then we're going to talk about a couple other specific things. We'll come back and talk a little more about alcoholism, and then some other things. Then we're going to talk and deal throughout in the day-to-day some more about how to minister to these individuals, how to set up ministry type centers, and focus on some of these areas. So, okay. So in the middle of the page of 81, gambling addiction. Gambling is now Americans' new pastime. And you guys know about gambling because we're in Choctaw country. And Choctaw gambling has made all of you wealthy, right? You're experiencing the overflow and the glory of the casinos, right? Producing all kinds of income and wealth for the Choctaw Nation. I mean, that was the point of it, wasn't it? Money, money for the people. and education, just like the casinos in Shreveport have greatly impacted the state of Louisiana. And 48 out of 50 states now in the United States have legalized gambling in some form or fashion. And our country's just thriving and doing great now because of this. Do you all agree? Well, okay. So, roughly 3/4 of all Americans gamble. So, some of you in here probably gamble. Presently, 48 out of 50 states allow legalized gambling. Americans place bets of $400 billion and lose $35 billion a year. So somebody's winning. Casinos, including those on Indian reservations, are legal in 21 states. Public acceptance of legalized gambling has now risen to about 3-1. So the public is highly in favor of it. Everybody's happy because we can gamble now. In 1992, a 1992 poll showed that 56% opposed it in their community. So opinion has changed greatly. Governments are now infatuated with gambling as a money source and as a stimulus for tourism and new jobs. Because they pay really good, don't they? Casinos? People working in them, don't they make good money? Yeah, I think they do. Criminal activity has markedly increased following the introduction of gambling. Now, I can't understand why, because when you're making good money and you're winning all kinds of money, why do you need to be involved in crime? In Colorado, legalized casino gambling in 1990 was followed by a 400% increase in assaults and thefts in Central City in 2 years, and Cripple Creek had to increase its police force from 3 to 24. That's a pretty big increase. Gambling tends to attract the criminal element. Problem gamblers often turn to crime to pay off gambling debts. Gambling is often trumpeted as an economic windfall and source of much-needed jobs. This may be partially true, but in the long run it will cost the community much more. Legalized gambling is inherently parasitic in any community. It also hurts the economy. It also creates large socioeconomic problems. There often is a 100% to 550% increase in the number of addicted gamblers. Pathological gambling. Most gambling experts suggest that 2 to 6% of Americans now have a significant gambling problem. Gamblers Anonymous estimate 6 to 10 million compulsive gamblers in the U.S. That's quite a few people. Social cost. Compulsive gamblers affect 10 to 20 relatives, friends, and business partners. Families are most seriously affected, often resulting in divorce, child abuse and neglect, substance abuse, and suicide attempts. The poor are often the hardest hit. Gambling in youth. Youth are especially susceptible to the enticement to gambling. It may become more serious of a problem in youth than drug abuse in the near future. The work ethic is undermined by the hope for an easy way to wealth through gambling. The more people believe in the importance of luck, chance, and fate, the less they believe in the importance of stern virtues such as work, thrift, and deferral of gratification. Well, there you have it. It has its disadvantages. Gorski devised some stages of recovery when ministering to people in this addiction. And gambling is an addiction like every addiction. There's a process of recovery. And in order to reach that process of recovery, person's got to first realize they have a problem. They've got to admit they have a problem, and then they've got to come to the place to where they are willing to stop where they are and get help. And they've got to realize, too, that really the help lies in the Lord, and surrender to that. The first step is transition, or in the process, and that's needed to develop motivating problems, the failure of normal problem solving, failure of controlled use strategies, and acceptance of need for abstinence. So they've got to, first of all, in order to begin to make a transition, they've got to come to conclusions here about 4 of them. They've got to come to the understanding that they've got some problems. And they've got to begin to realize what motivates them toward this problem. They've got to realize that they are failing in normal problem solving. In other words, they can't figure out a way to fix this. They're failing in their own attempts and areas to control strategies and efforts to stop. And they've got to come to the conclusion that the only answer is to quit. Not cut it back, not get a better strategy or a better game at the table. Because they go through a lot of these thought processes. Well, I'm not hitting the tables right. Well, maybe if I cut back a little bit. Maybe if I approach it differently. No, they've got to come to the conclusion, the only way for me to win is to quit. And so that begins a transition period. And then there's the period of stabilization. And this is a recognition of need for help, recovery from immediate after effects, interrupting pathological preoccupations, learning non-chemical stress management methods, and developing hope and motivation. So very quickly, in the stabilization period, you've got to recognize I'm coming out of this transition period. Now I've got to have help. I can't do it on my own. I need other people in my life, and I need the Lord in my life. Recovery of immediate after effects. There are going to be issues or repercussions to quitting. It's not going to be easy. There are going to be some after effects. I've got to accept that, and I'll deal with those as they come. Interrupting pathological preoccupations. I can't always be thinking about what it was like. I can't always be thinking about what I'm missing. I can't be thinking about what I could be winning or I could be accomplishing if I just went back. Learning non-chemical stress management. I can't replace that addiction with a new addiction. Hello? Okay. There's going to be stress. There's going to be issues because I am in transition, because I am moving in a new direction. So I'm going to have to manage this. I'm going to have to deal with this new life, but I can't pull in chemicals like alcohol or drugs or any other thing to replace the old addiction of gambling with a new addiction. I've got to use the Word of God. I've got to use prayer. I've got to use, good relationships and things like this. And then fifthly, developing hope and motivation. I've got to learn how to encourage myself in the Lord. I've got to learn how to hope in a new future and in a new life and in destiny. I can't be looking back and still thinking, but maybe this would have been the time I would have hit it big. You see what drives people to go back? But when you're playing the odds, you're always one step away. This is crazy stuff, but this is how they feel. Early recovery, full conscious recognition of addictive disease, full acceptance and integration of the addiction, learning non-chemical coping skills, short-term social stabilization, and developing a sobriety-centered value system. Basically, it starts off here with full acceptance and a full conscious awareness that I have an addictive disease. I'm not just a gambler, I'm an addicted person. I don't gamble, gambling has a hold of my life. I don't control my gambling, gambling controls me. That's the step. Coming to the full place, number 2, where I accept And I'm willing to integrate the whole concept and idea of this addiction and everything that implies. That means that I'm not going to fight the healing process. I'm not going to fight the structures and the systems that are laid out for me to get well and to get healed. In other words, that means I'm going to put denial aside. And I'm going to accept who I am as an addicted person, and I'm going to find freedom. Learning non-chemical coping skills, again, same process. I don't use anything except what's pure and wholesome and holy to walk this thing out. Short-term social stabilization, that means I'm going to find people and resources, and most of all, the Lord and prayer and His Word. And typically, on the short-term basis, they need to get in a recovery center just like, and usually the same recovery center or type of recovery center as any other addict. With alcoholics and drug addicted people, because addiction is addiction. And the same principles apply to everybody. It doesn't matter what your preferred addiction is. The principles are what brings healing and brings deliverance. Okay? And number 5, developing a sobriety-centered value system. That's part of what happens in the program. That's what they're taught. That's what they learn. That's what they begin to walk out. And in a structured program for 12 months, they learn to live it with support and with other fellows who share their same goals and vision. And it helps them. Then the middle recovery, resolving the demoralization crisis, repairing addiction caused by social damage, establishing a self-regulated recovery program, establishing lifestyle balance, and management of change. Basically, this is, they have to work through the demoralization crisis. In other words, you come to a point where you finally are processing through this thing, and it's a healthy process, and you finally realize, what a mistake I made. What a, how bad I've messed up. It's called shame. And when you reach that process, you have to work through that and resolve it, that yes, it was a mess, and yes, I was wrong, and I am so ashamed now, and I'm so sorry for the way I treated my family. I'm so sorry for the hurt that I've caused. And so you process that, and you grieve over that, and you work through it, and you resolve that, and you go through that crisis, and then you repair addiction caused social damage. That's where you take what you resolve, and you work through that shame, and you go now and you apologize, and you go now and you repair relationships, and you go now and you start paying that money back that you owe people, and you do the things that you need to do. Number 3, establishing a self-regulated recovery program. This is where you begin to take personal responsibility for your actions and your deeds. You're on your way to recovery now. You're stabilized. You're beginning to work out your program of healing and recovery, but now you start saying, look, now I don't only still utilize the support and the help of the program that I'm in, but I also now am taking some personal initiative. I also now am beginning to get on my feet some and take responsibility. And now I'm beginning to look to the future. And I'm thinking about what's going to happen at the end of these 12 months and how I'm going to live when I leave here and how I'm going to be responsible and how I'm going to make up for the mistakes that I've made in the past in God's grace and with His help. Establishing lifestyle balance. Basically, that's beginning to live your new life. Live it according to God's Word. Live it according to balance and proper health, and that's beginning to realize what you really were put on earth for, instead of always trying to get something for nothing and so forth. And then management of change, structuring and planning out and developing how you're going to live out this new plan in this new life. And going from there. And then late recovery, recognizing the effects of childhood problems on sobriety. Learning about family of origin issues, conscious examination of childhood, application to adult living, and change of lifestyle. And basically in late recovery, you are at a point now to where you're able to discover. You're able to learn about your origin. You're able to learn about, how did I get in this place? What led me in this direction? And so now you begin to recognize some of the effects and some of the things in your life that brought you in this direction, and some of the things in your family's life, and just you consciously examine your childhood, and you make some application to adult living, how you lived and how you ended up in your crisis situation, and how you're going to now live differently, and you're going to move forward. So you learn from it, and you gain some wisdom so that you can be healed in the right areas. And then how you're going to change in your lifestyle. And then finally, maintenance. Maintain a recovery program, effective day-to-day coping, continued growth and development, and effective coping with life transitions. And basically, that's your carry-through program. That's what you live day to day from here on out. After you leave your center, the center. After you now, you've matured, you've grown, you're on the right track, you have an understanding, and you have experienced healing. And so now you are working it out day to day. You're continuing to grow and develop in the Lord and in your relationships with the people around you. And you're going to cope. And now when crisis comes, and now when the normal storms and the winds blow and the rains come, which happens to everybody, you're not going to panic and run back to that old detrimental, destructive lifestyle. You're going to deal with it as a normal, healthy person because you know how now. And you've got beyond that old man, that old person. Amen? Just very quickly, let's skim over some negative uses of alcohol in Scripture. We want to cover these. Most are included on the next page under addictions and sins and sicknesses. So probably what I think we'll do is we'll just go to that page. Go to the next page where it says addiction, sin, or sickness. Obviously, we have a big clash of systems going on right now. One system says alcoholism is a sickness, and one system says it's a sin. And to some degree, it is both. And if it's not both, it becomes both. At very least. We can definitely say that it becomes a sickness if it's not a sickness. And even biologically, I can go with the idea that it is to some degree a sickness if you want to go with the psychological, scientific element, because some cultures biologically are more prone to become alcoholics than others are. However, from a Christian biblical standpoint, we tend to call that generational curses, which, whether you want to, on the scientific side, call it DNA, or on the spiritual side, call it curses, I think in the end is irrelevant, because either one takes God to heal. Hello? Because He's the healer, and He's the deliverer. And so, we'll approach this the way that I have it here, but ultimately, it's going to take the Word of God and God Himself. So let's look at what the Bible has to say here. We have Noah as an example here in Genesis chapter 9, verse 21. In this particular episode here, we don't have time to read these scriptures, so I'm going to tell you the story. And most of you are Bible scholars here. I can look at you and tell. So you'll know the story when I tell you some details about it. In Genesis chapter 9, verse 21, Noah had too much to drink. He got drunk. And basically, he got naked. And his son Ham saw this, and he went and told his brothers. Now, when you read that, and basically that in a nutshell is how it's worded. But in actuality, when you go into the original language, there's a greater implication there in how that Ham viewed this thing. And the implication is that there was some sin involved. But our focus is more on the alcoholism here and the sin that was produced out of Noah's drinking here, which was the drunkenness. The sin was the drunkenness. Do you all understand what I'm saying? And so that's what we're pointing out right here. And the Bible in no way presents that as a sickness. Noah wasn't sick. He just got drunk. And the Bible declares, and we've already read this last night, that drunkenness is a sin. Now, not getting drunk one time will send you to hell. But if you do that repeatedly, then you are a drunkard. Drunkenness is an episode. A drunkard is someone who is drunk. again and again and again. It's a lifestyle. Do you understand? And what God calls us to do is repent of drunkenness and of being a drunkard. So, drunkenness is a sin, but a drunkard is someone who lives the lifestyle of drunkenness. Genesis chapter 19:32, the daughters of Lot decided that they needed to produce a lineage. So they get Lot drunk. That's their daddy, by the way. And the older one goes in and conceives and works out. And so she comes to the younger one and she says, hey, it worked. I got daddy drunk. Well, anyway, so you go, and it'll work for you too. And sure enough, both of them had children. Obviously, there was incest there. There were all kinds of sins that were produced there, to say enough. But the sin that we're dealing with here and focusing on is the sin, again, of the alcoholism, the drunkenness. The Scripture, again, is showing us that the sin of drunkenness leads not only to the initial sin, but it opens the door for other things. And this is what we see throughout humanity today. Alcoholism doesn't only begin with the sin of being drunk, but it generally always opens the door for other sin. It gives entrance for the enemy to come in and brings child abuse. It creates the devil's opportunity to bring financial difficulty into homes. It creates marital problems, sometimes divorce, sometimes abusiveness. All kinds of things will generally, not always, I'm not saying always, but generally where there is alcoholism, there will be other sin that is the result of that open door. How many of you know if you open the door, the devil is not going to stop by just sending one devil? Hello? There's going to be other problems, other sins, other issues that are going to come with that, and you're going to have a house full of horrors because of that issue. Genesis 27:25, drunkenness impaired the ability of Isaac to discern which son he was blessing with the birthright. You know the story. Jacob and Esau. And the blessing was supposed to go to the oldest son, and the oldest son was going to go out and he was going to bring back fresh meat, and the mother and the deceptive son prepared a stew. He comes in. The old man was so blind he couldn't see. The younger son puts on some wool because the older son was hairy and he was the man of the field. And he deceives the father. And so the father blesses the younger. Of course, we know God works in all things. Even when bad happens, God can turn it for good, right? But because of too much drinking, a man's discernment is blurred. And he's not able to choose the right thing, and he gives away something that's very precious to the wrong one. Again, what happens? Drunkenness is a sin, and it opens the door to grievous errors and mistakes. Nabal, in 1 Samuel 25:36, Nabal is home, he's drunk, he's partying, while Abigail is out saving his men. David's going to come in and wipe them out because Nabal's such a knothead. He was just an arrogant, stiff-necked knothead, basically. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. It's too much to it. And so this good woman, she's just a beautiful, kind, good-hearted woman. She's out being loyal to this old knothead and protecting him and his men from destruction. And this guy's at home partying and drunk. And this good woman is protecting him. In 2 Samuel 11:13, we have Uriah. And you know the story. Uriah is a faithful, loyal man to the king. He's a soldier, and he's a great guy. And because David has slept with his wife and been unfaithful to God and to Uriah with his wife, David tries to trick him up, and tries to get him to drink. and to get him drunk, and tries to get him to in a position where that he will, he gets him drunk, and he tries to get him to sleep with another woman's, or with his wife, I mean, so that it'll appear that he got his wife pregnant so that David can cover his hide his sin. Well, you know the story. As it turns out, Uriah is so loyal and faithful, even when he's drunk, he won't do it. So David eventually has him killed by putting him on the front line, a man who shouldn't have been there at that point in time. Drunkenness. Sad, sad. Amnon is murdered by Absalom after making him drunk for the rape of Tamar. This is a family crisis right here. All kinds of incest, all kinds of messed up stuff. And one brother is mad at another brother because the sister's been raped by the other brother. And so, alcohol is in the middle of the whole situation. Elah. Imri, captain of half of Elah's chariots, he came in and he killed him, and he was drinking himself drunk, the Bible says. I like that phrase. Drinking himself drunk. I've heard of people, let's go get drunk tonight. That's a guy who's drinking himself drunk. Y'all looking at me like y'all know what I'm talking about. Here's another, Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad defeated Ahab. Ben-Hadad was, he was defeated by Ahab, I'm sorry, because Ben-Hadad was drunk. It's real hard to do any kind of warfare when you're drunk. Now, Ben-Hadad was a bad guy to start with. And at this particular time, Ahab was, he was on the right side. He didn't stay there, but,